is still 6:30. Welcome everyone to the council workshop. I'll call the meeting to order and ask for a roll call.
Thank you. Andrews? Here. Ellis?
Yes, here.
Francie? We'll wrap back around. Gordon? Kochman?
Here.
Mackey? Meskis?
Present.
Richrod? Muted, Alan. There you go.
There it is. Okay. I'm not here.
Thank you. Ross? Shaw?
Here.
Short? Taylor?
Here.
Shave?
Here.
Thank you.
So I'll just share with everybody that Councilmember Ross won't be joining us tonight. She's dealing with a family matter. So we'll keep her in our thoughts. And at this time, I will turn it over to the mayor and his staff. We are all ears, Mayor.
Well, let me just read this. I'm pleased to submit for your consideration the 2022 proposed annual budget for the city of Aberdeen. The budget is balanced by proposed use of ARPA funds to cover 10% of police salary and fringe and 40% of correction officers, as well as 40% of fire and EMS salary fringe. Using ARPA funds for these expenses saves us from having to draw additional monies from our reserves and allows for a clean, balanced budget. In going through the requested budgets, I wanted to make sure that any changes that had to be made would be changes that had the least impact on our citizens, personnel, and the workplace, while still moving the city forward. I worked with each department head going line by line through their budget and finding the cuts that together we were comfortable with. One of the major areas that was cut across the board is new vehicle purchases. This saved us an initial $240,000 right off the bat. I understand the importance of keeping our fleets up to date, but felt this was something we could hold off for another year. Most departments still have a balance in their ERR fund and will be able to purchase with those funds. There is just no additional funds being added to that this year. Phase 2 of the criminal justice facility design has also been removed from this year's budget. Due to the project being delayed by COVID and other issues, the $90,000 expense is not something that we could afford to move forward with at this time. Personnel changes in the budget include 2 additional maintenance 1 workers, 1 in the street department and 1 in the water department. All 4 union contracts are current through 2022 and will not have be negotiated until the 2023 budget. The budget provides for any normal progressive step increases for those not presently at the top of their position or class range. Overall, this budget provides for the necessary projects that the city needs to continue moving forward while still providing for our staff and allowing a safe and comfortable place to continue to work. With all the unknowns of COVID-19 still very much on the forefront, I believe that we are faring well overall. However, can continue to move forward with cautious optimism. Respectfully, Mayor Pete Shave.
Thank you, Mayor. Does anyone have any questions for the mayor on his transmittal message? Seeing none, next is an overview of the mayor's budget by our finance director, Patricia Soul.
Thank you. Let me share my screen. Do you all see 2022 budget overview?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so I wanted to start the budget overview with an overview of the budget calendar. So what has happened so far? We had revenue sources presented September 29th. First reading of the budget document was on November 10th. First reading of the property tax levy was also on November 10th. What is left on the budget calendar? These two workshops tonight and tomorrow. The second and hopefully final reading of the property tax levy on 11/23. It must be certified at Grays Harbor County by November 30th to meet the RCW 845270. Second reading of the budget ordinance on November 23rd. And then the third and final reading of the budget ordinance is proposed on the calendar to be December 8th, 2021. Not on the budget calendar is the 2021 supplemental budget, which will be presented on the 23rd for the first reading. Tonight's order of presentation, which is on the agenda, just to make sure we're all on the same page. Mayor's message, my presentation of the overview of the 2022 budget, Judge Solon, her judicial budget, Police Chief Steve Shoemate's police budget, and Fire Chief Tom Hubbard's fire budget. Tomorrow night, we will start with direct.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
At least one thing you said is different than the PowerPoint that I thought I went through. Did you correct the 11/24 to 11/23? Is that the only change?
That is the change to the slides. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry. I just want to make sure that you sent out the one you intended.
Well, I did send it out, and then I realized that I put the 24th instead of the 23rd. So fixed it.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. And then tomorrow's presentation will start with Director Lisa Scott for the community development and abatement budgets. Parks Director Stacy Barnum will be doing the parks budgets, and Public Works Director Rick Sanger will be doing the public works and utility budgets. Looking at the 2022 budget, the key summary details, the ASME and non-rep COLA of 3.5% is included. The police 4% COLA is included, and fires 3% is included. Below that, I've listed when these were approved and what each year from 2020 to 2022 was. So you have a history there. Currently known changes to fringe. Health insurance went up 5.8% with the city's wellness discount. PERS went down 2%. LEF went down 1%. And paid family medical leave went up 0.2%. ASME dental went up 0.03%. Those are the known changes. Those were the estimates given to us by WCIA, and we use those to calculate salary, the fringe for the employees. Current liability, property and vehicle insurance increased from $689,195 to the WCI estimated $871,415, an increase of $182,220. The largest increase was due to liability of $175,255 and was due to our claim history here at Aberdeen. I removed the committed cash from the general fund operating cash. So the amount was $17,950,191, and that was a combination of the $14 million set aside for the gateway as well as the levy, and the remaining balance of the fire funds. So when you look at the cash for general fund, it is a reduction due to putting these aside in committed funds. And then the final bullet point overall is we received ARPA grant dollars for in 2021 and will in 2022, which we budgeted to be used for fire, EMS, and police. This allows for existing expenses to be paid with qualified COVID-19 response expenses, and will allow for unrestricted use of the extra cash in general fund and EMS as things come up in 2022 or as we finalize this budget. So the first slide is the citywide revenue comparison by account type. So this is all of the funds for the city. If you want to find this in your 2022 materials document that I sent you, it is on page, hold on, page 3. It has both the revenue and the expense, if this is hard for you to read.
Could you let us know which file it is? Because we've received like 3 emails with different attachments. So knowing
So
the file.
the last email has 3 attachments, and one of them is 2022 budget materials. Okay, so when we look at the revenues, I wanted to point out the largest increases of the 2022 revenues. So, or the percentages, not the increases, the percentage of where the revenue is coming from. 24.5% is coming from charges for services. 24.1% is coming from grants. 23.8% is coming from taxes, and 22.7% is coming from other financing sources. Another way to look at that is on this chart where it shows and this shows the differences between 22 and 21. It shows that taxes, charges for services, and other financing sources are the large ones that, and grants are the large ones that show. The next slide is the expenditures, which again are on page 3 of the 2022 budget materials. The largest percent of the expenditures is 39.1% are salaries and fringe. They are for 2022, 17,348,000, and fringe is 7,037,000. The next largest is capital outlay and projects at 38.8%. And that is in right here, 27,528,000, up 8.3 million from prior year. And then the final other large one is the 11.2 for other financing uses, which is loans, transfers, those kind of things that come into the city. If you look at the expenses, the other one that increased was $911,000 was a transfer from the TBD fund into Fund 105 to do TBD projects. This one shows all of the different expenditures, the differences between 2021 and 2022. And as you see, estimated beginning cash definitely took a hit, but it's going into committed, so it isn't going away. Capital outlay and projects did a significant surge as discussed before. This is on, if you go to page 4 through 8 of your materials packet. It starts with by fund, by department. I don't have it up, I just have the summary up here. But when you look at the document, you can see the different a second, I'm gonna pull it up. So it lists the different departments, how many employees are in each department, and then what salary range they are in, and it lists it by what position they're in, not by employee name. So it gives you also the grade that they're currently in that department that makes up the range. So the detail is provided to you in the document you sent, and this is just the one that summarizes it. We have 24,385,990 in salaries and fringe in payroll for the city of Aberdeen. It shows a percent based by department. As you would suspect, police and fire are 2 largest. Next in line is the fire, police, and EMS. And then you also have your streets, which is 16 employees. So it lists all of them. It shows water also is at 19. So it shows a percent, it shows the amount, and then how many positions are in each section. Before we move into general fund, are there any questions?
I have one. Under the expenditures, especially payroll, I don't see a line item for city administrator. I don't know that we decided not to have one. I think that's something that we should definitely push for and have in our budget because our city needs an administrator.
So I guess the question would be, it looks like the mayor's not included that. So the question for the finance director would be, how much does the council need to look for if we want to add that in and keep that as an option next year?
You're probably looking at, we were supposed to be getting the salary study that was being done. I don't know if they included the city administrator or not. I'm going to have to reach out to them to find out. But they run typically between 140 and 180,000, depending on what city. That's just salary, not fringe. So that's a significant amount being added. And again, that's mayor's budget. So he didn't choose to include it. And what if I'm asked to come up with a price for that or whatever, I can do that for council and the mayor.
I think there is, I think, we can't make decisions, but we can certainly ask for information tonight. And I think that is something that is certainly topical enough that our community needs to know what the dollar amount for that is so that we can, at least there's enough interest out there on why we do or do not include it.
Okay, I'll provide that information.
Thank you.
Patricia, go ahead.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Councilmember Ellis.
Thank you. Patricia, will you remind us as to how much total dollars the ARPA funding represents for the 2022 budget?
Yeah, let me share a different, I need to stop sharing this and then I'll pull up that just a sec.
That comes up later, right?
Well, I can bring it up now if you'd like.
Sure.
I just need to find the document real quick here. No, come on. Let's try again. There it is. All right. So can you all see the one that says citywide fund summary and proposed supplemental budget?
Yes.
Okay. So if you start here in 2021 proposed use of ARPA and you follow this down, it shows current expense. The total ARPA is $2,338,702 in 21 and will be the same in 2022. So the proposed use for general fund is down here at the bottom, and it includes police and fire salaries and fringe that are being charged to the general fund of $1,131,323. Zoom video conferencing for $5,880. Hybrid council meeting video audio for 10. And then server backup upgrade that was already approved by council. Then when you go into Fund 102, which is parks, there is PPE express cleaning of $11,312. The homeless task force for 21, that's the expenses that are allowed from March 4th through October when we stopped charging for some of the stuff that was out there previously. That's $118,457, which qualifies completely for the COVID, as it was a proclamation that required the camp stay open and through the end of September. And then EMS, which is the other portion of fire and EMS, which is $924,336. Animal control, police officer, $10,383. Parking enforcement, $5,876, which is 10%. And then water, which you approved as a council for the water customer service temporary to help with the payment plans due to ARA of $27,000. And that's where we get the $2,338,702 in 21. And then in 2022, the plan was to use it on police and fire. So the $15,594,044 is police and fire salaries for the whole year at 10% for police, 40% for both corrections and fire, and then 40% for fire to get us to the $238,702.
So would it be fair to say that without the ARPA funding, our budget would have to be cut.
It either have to be cut or our cash would go down significantly. And the cuts that would be required could involve bigger things than what people may be willing to do at this point. Council would have to make some hard decisions if that was a choice. So why the choice for ARPA being used for the existing expenses are they are #1 on the list of ARPA funded uses. And they are expenses that are combating COVID-19 and allow for the funds to be for expenses that we're already paying. ARPA is not as easy as we can use it for anything like we did for CARES. There's a lot of qualifications. One of them is our revenue projections show that we didn't have the down surge that a lot of cities had. So there isn't a huge gap in there to fill in with city expenses based on the excess loss of revenue that you had in general funds. So again, it's council's decision, but this is the recommendation of the mayor.
Very good. Thank you for these thorough numbers and
welcome
and clear graphics.
Thank you so much. Hold on, let me get out of this real quick and then back into the PowerPoint.
So I just had a quick question, seeing no one else. The payroll info that you mentioned that has more detail that went out today, does that include comparisons to last year so we can look at how that's changing?
Last year, we do not have those numbers. They were not provided last year. And when I look back, the last time it appeared that they were provided was for the 17 budget that was done prior to my coming. So there's 3 years of nothing. So getting that request as late as we did, being able to calculate that and give you accurate numbers, we might be able to get it for you for the second reading for sure by the third, but we don't have that. I did put in what I knew of differences.
I appreciate, I saw it and I appreciated that very much, but I just wasn't sure. You mentioned there was more detail.
It's on those pages. It's not just that summary. It's every fund and what positions are in the fund and the salary range in those funds. So that was the detail I was talking about.
Thank you.
Back up. Okay. So gotta get back down to where I need to be. All right. So any more questions before I move into general fund? Sorry. All right. So mouse is just making this thing fly around. So on page in the packet, to see this slide, which is hard to read, would be page 9. So that allows you to see more clearly across the whole screen. So this is the comparative budget summary from 19 through 22. And I also put year-to-date through 11/11 to give you the most up-to-date numbers that I had. And so as we go through this, I have graphs to go, but currently we're using $77,921 before any changes of the general fund reserve for balancing the 2022 budget. The piece that I thought would be most interesting to you is beginning fund balance was estimated to be for 2022 was estimated to be $23,825,000. Then I show where I'm taking out the committed funds, which is the $14 million for the levy and for Gateway. And then $3,950,191 was the balance remaining in the fire insurance. So that's where the beginning estimated cash for general fund is at the $5,875,000 with the revenues, the excess expenses using the $77,921. And then that's where the ending cash comes in at $5,797,000. So that just shows you why when you look at the differences, it went down so much as we're pulling it out of the budget and we're putting in committed and not budgeted funds. The Armory fire, I brought that up because this slide explains where the $3,950,191 comes from. And I know you all saw that when the decision was made to commit the levy funds of $7 million. So it's just a reminder slide, but I wanted it to be part of the overall packet. General fund revenues, I took them, there's a couple different graphs. I think pictures say a lot. Taxes are 81% of general fund. So when you look at general fund, you see that that is the majority. Intergovernmental revenues are funding from states and grants from local, statewide areas.
Patricia, are there supposed to be different slides showing? We're on, I'm seeing citywide expenditures comparison by account type.
Oh, okay. That should be showing the slide because the slide shows up. So
yeah, I was just going to say that happens to me sometimes. So I think it's when you try to switch your screens or something.
That could be what happened. I don't know.
So while we're on a little bit of an interruption, can I ask someone who has it to send the link to Councilmember Short? She's on speaker with me here, but she is not able to get into the meeting. So all she can do is hear. So if somebody could try resending her the link from staff as a panelist, that'd be great.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see if this works. Do you guys see the PowerPoint right now?
No.
Ah, dang it. Don't know what's going on here. I got too many things open, I think. Hold on. Screen 2, there we are. And now do you see it? No, yeah.
Payroll by fund, yes.
Okay, so let me get down to where we're supposed to be. There we go. So did you guys see this slide when I was talking about estimated cash balances?
Nope.
No.
Okay, so this is the one that I talked through where we went from 23 million minus the 14 million minus the 3,000,009 to get to beginning cash of 5,875,000. Use of funds of 77,921, and then ending cash of 5,797,000. Then the next one was the armory slide. So you guys see that one?
Yep.
No, we didn't.
Okay, good. All right.
Well, we didn't before, but we do now.
Good. Just making
Right.
sure. So I don't want to just go on my merry way thinking you're seeing it. So this is the slide that you guys should be familiar with. This is the one where when they were committing the levy funds, so we could come down to how much we've utilized and what the remaining balance is. So that's the slide, the part of the packet. Then now the general fund revenues. So taxes are 81% of the overall budget for general fund, and grants, loans, direct federal are 9%. Intergovernmental revenues are 3%. And then the other ones are very small percent. So those are the three large ones. Another slide to show it so you can see a history is this is a slide that shows 4 different periods, 2 actuals, a budget, and the proposed for 2022 of the different groups of revenues. So taxes, license and permits, grants for local, direct fed, indirect, and state, intergovernmental revenues, which are the revenues that are shared by the state, and some monies that are provided by the county, charges for services, which usually are in our engineering as well as our community service area in general fund. Fines and forfeitures are typically our police and fire. Miscellaneous revenue this is where the insurance money went. So the 10 million and the 12 million that are showing there. For 19 and 20, and then the other financing sources. This is another chart, but this is on expenses. So you'll see over here that we have a chart that shows below the line. That's for our indirect cost allocation. Those are our dollars that we transfer out to the self-supported funds. So the utility funds, the other funds that have payroll. So abatement gets some of it. A bunch of them that are self-supported are part of this. Then you have your salaries and wages, which again show the high percent that they are, and fringe of the overall budget for general fund. The next one is the general fund expenditures by department. Just doing it by account type doesn't give you some of the detail that I think you guys like to see and I like to see myself. And so this is all of the departments, their actual 2020 actual, 21 budget, and then 22 mayor's budget with the variance between the funds. If you want to see this detail and also the more detail by the departments, the page to go to is in the budget supplemental, the materials that were sent is on page 10 through 14. So this is a summary of the totals by departments, but on page 10 through 14, it goes through all of the different types of salary fringe and the different types by department. So you can see. The other thing that it goes through in the general governmental department, which is 001-05, it shows the transfers. So this is the majority, large part of the general governmental budget, and it has to do with transferring out to all of these different funds to support them. So this just gives you a clear, defined picture of what has been transferred out, what is planned for 2022, and a history, so you can see that. And then the final thing that I want to discuss in general governmental are the 3 budgets that the mayor and I sent mine, mayor looked at it and made changes. But I helped with legal, and so did the mayor, and we helped with human resources after the HR director left. So finance, I just wanted to talk through the changes. So we added mid-2021 one FTE for public records, and she was moved from legal. In legal, she was a part-time 0.5, so we moved her and made her a full-time. We had an increase to salaries and fringe due to COLA fringe increases. Springbrook Civic Pay module was added in 2019, but didn't become active until 2021. So clients can pay their utility bills with their credit card for automatic monthly payments. So that charge was not included in the budget, as I was unaware of it, and it became active. So the charge came through in 21. Legal, they added a halftime. The legal assistant went from halftime to full-time, so they added a 0.5 to make them full-time. The increase, the mayor and I increased the professional services due to having an interim corporate counsel, and then adjusted areas based on prior year actuals. So we went back and looked at the prior years to see if they had spent that much in the last 3 years or even halfway through this year. And if not, then he set the budget at the level that was an average of those years. Human resources, she did set the budget before she left, but the mayor again took a look at hers and made changes as needed after review of prior year actuals. And then that's it for me as the overall summary. If you have any questions, please let me know.
I have a few.
Okay.
Going back to the couple slides, the general fund transfer to other funds, where you show the expenditures year to date. Are we pretty much on track to meet what was budgeted for this year, or are we looking at being over at all?
Nope, we actually do it a monthly transfer to try to keep the monthly financials within balance. So every month there's a portion moved for the monthly transfers. So at the end of the year, we will have transferred what the 2021 budget calls for.
Okay. And then if I could just run down my list of a few more questions. Sure. Could you give some examples of what constitute other financing sources?
Yes, actually. So in other financing sources, it is, hold on, I'm gonna pull it up real quick. Mostly it's transfers between departments. ERO transfers for equipment reserve, if there's any of that. These transfers show up as other financing sources. The transfers out. Transfers, like I said, from the TBD fund 130 into 105 arterials, so they can do the street work that the TBD needs to pay for. Hold on. Also, loans, if we receive loans, those go into other financing sources. And we had some of that in our the ECY bulk hypo loan, WWTP influence screening loan. Those loans are budgeted to come in. We also have critical WWTP improvement loan and the pump station improvement loan. Both of those are budgeted to come in to the tune of close to 7 million.
Mhm.
You add the money together. One of them, we have more money coming from the SRF, but it's less, so it's a reduction in the transfers. But yeah, that's basically what they are. Internal transfers or loans.
Okay, and then is the estimated ending cash for 2022, is that the same as start of the year? Oh, wait a minute, I'm trying to read my question here. So estimated ending cash, does that mean the end of 2021 or the start of 22?
Budgeted beginning fund balance of 5.8 million is the beginning of 2022, and the ending fund balance is at the end of 2022.
Okay, thank you. And then one more, and this is really helpful. Why is ending cash considered to be an expense?
It's not an expense. It's budgeted as an item to balance the budget. So when you budget your cash into your final budget, so your revenue matches your expenses, you do that via beginning and ending cash. So when I took out the committed cash, the ending cash changed, it went down, but the goal is that we will spend within what we anticipate. Now, if you get into supplemental budget time and you have expenses that you need to increase via the supplemental budget ordinance, you use your ending cash to increase them. Or if you get revenue that you don't anticipate, then that increases your beginning cash. So it's how you balance out the changes to the budget. And it's also a way to be transparent so people know what anticipated cash is sitting there to pay for expenses.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome. So any other questions?
I might have a couple, but I think I want to hear the rest of the presentations first.
Okay, sounds good. I'll go ahead and stop my screen share.
Anyone else? Thanks, everybody.
So Judge Solon will be the next one to present.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear, sounding good.
Okay, you can. Okay, good.
Yep. Good evening.
Good evening. All right. Okay, here we go. Okay, so can everybody see my PowerPoint?
Yep. Yes, we can.
Very good. So just as a reminder to everyone, because you don't see me that often here at City Council, I'm Judge Solon. I have been your judge for just finishing my 8th year. And so I'm just going to start off with a little overview of the court. So the first slide I have prepared for you is, this is all the municipal courts of Grace Harbor County. And what you're seeing here is just the caseloads of new cases filed every year. And it's just a nice overview to see what, you know, how busy we are, what the cases are. So when I prepared the projections for finishing out this year, I did this back in October. So, you know, there might be new numbers coming out soon, but you see we have probably a few less cases this year. So did Hoquiam. It kind of looks similar. So whatever's going on there, we're kind of matching up there. And you'll see on the next slide, that's with Olympia as well. It's still a very busy caseload. And so my next shot, this is a comparison with Olympia Municipal Court. And I always like to include this because we do match up with Olympia Municipal the closest in terms of our volume. And you can see that in 2020, which is the lighter blue side of the circle, we actually had more cases than Olympia last year. We did 3,015, and they had 2,870 cases. These are new cases getting filed. And then you can see this year we're both going down slightly. They've got us by, I don't know, a little less than 100. And that's a projection, of course. And then just so for everybody's edification, the Administrative Office of the Courts does track all the data for the court. So there is a state agency that tracks all this data where we pull these numbers from. All right, so this is a new slide I'm presenting this year, just to give you an idea that those are just the cases being filed every year, but these are the amount of hearings being held. So, you know, a case gets filed and there's an arraignment, then there's usually, you know, there can be one more hearing, there could be 10 more hearings. So we have lots of hearings. So I'm projecting that we're going to have about 6,308 hearings this year. We're very busy. This slide just shows Administrative Office of the Courts, again, does an estimate for how many judges you need for your court. The last time this was estimated was in 2019, and I'm a 0.75. And they say the amount of work is about a 1.13. We're getting it done, but I just like to show that's what their estimate is. This slide is just showing you kind of an update of what we've been up to. So again, the court has always remained operational throughout the pandemic. We are still hearing cases over Zoom, and that's been going really well, actually. When the county went to phase 3 of its recovery plan, we did open the court lobby. That was March 22nd of this year. And then we had also added a Zoom kiosk in the lobby for participants who don't have access to Zoom, so that everybody can attend court and that lack of technology isn't an excuse. And it's really worked out really just quite brilliantly. People come in, they stand right there, the clerk can help them, we can see them, they see us, they can fill out paperwork while they're there. It's been really nice. Okay. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. So as a result of COVID, court operations meetings started with the Chief Justice and the other DMCGA judges. That stands for District and Municipal Court Judges Association. And those have continued. They used to be weekly, like early on a Friday morning, and now sometimes they're once a month or twice, depending on what kind of issues are being raised by the court. And I attend those regularly, and that's really helpful. Just whatever challenges the courts are facing, you know, the judges are all talking about what's working in their courts, what isn't. So that's really nice. I've issued a few emergency administrative orders, and that would just be things about certain court procedures, you know, whether we're open or not, how that's going. We still have the log pavilion booked moving forward about every 6 weeks for jury trials if needed. And that is because the courthouse, and primarily the jury deliberation room, which is actually my office, it's a small office, and that's where we shove these 6 jurors. So it is really close quarters, even in regular times. So that's hard to get around. So we do have that log pavilion booked. We didn't end up having a trial this year. Cases settle. That's the way they work. So, but it was on standby. So I try to be in good contact with the Parks Department. When we know we're not going to have a trial, I let them know so they can release those dates and let somebody else use it. But we do have that set up if we need it. And the courts had access to some CARES funding that was given to the courts as opposed to just the city. And I did apply for some funding, and it was authorized to cover some jury trials, but then they never went. But I did make that step to get coverage for us. And then community court, that's our therapeutic court, that continues with a modified format. That's my next slide, so I'll go into that in a moment. And then we did hire a new court clerk in May after the departure of a longtime employee. But the court has always had 5 employees for a very long time, years and years and years. So that would be me, the judge. We have a court administrator, an assistant court administrator, and 2 court clerks. Okay, this is my community court slide. And for those of you that aren't familiar with that, that is our therapeutic court. I'm going to tell you, it's like a drug court, but slightly different, but it's same goal. We're just trying to help people get connected with resources, and so they'll just get out of the criminal justice system. We have a caseworker who is provided to us from CAP, And that caseworker meets with folks, finds out what their needs are. They create an action plan, and then they're tasked with completing that action plan. And if they're successful, they get their charges dismissed. So the prosecutor identifies people that qualify for this program, refers them over. It's a voluntary program that defendant would have to follow up, has to do the work. Most of the times it does include chemical dependency treatment and or mental health treatment. You're required to give back to the community by doing community service or paying costs in lieu of doing that community service. So there's lots of different things they have to get done. And the people that really want to do it, we've had some great success stories, and even people that really have spent a lot of time in the criminal justice system, and then we get them out the door and on their way, employed, healthy. It's really rewarding to see. And I think all of us at the court, the prosecutor's office, the public defender, myself, our staff, it's a rewarding program that we have that for people that want it, right? That want to get the help. So this slide shows our anniversary every year is in February. And at that time, I analyzed all the stats. I put out a press release. You can see here, we issued a press release March 24th, and the Daily World did run that article the next day. They usually put it right on the front page, which is nice. And at that time, we had 139 graduates from the program after 4 years. And when I prepared this slide, we had 149, but as of now, we have 152 is where we're at. So we are still, again, we are still fully functional even through COVID. And then you can see the cost savings. This has provided the city, and we've got an 85% reduction in recidivism. That's, reoffending. So I think it's a great program, and it doesn't cost the city any money, right? We get our caseworker through CAP, and those of us that work in the courts, we're just working the courts, and this is just another program we're working. So we enjoy that. And right now we do that on Tuesday afternoons at 1:30 is when we see these folks. They usually are in the program for a year, and they have to check in with the court all the time, and we're on them. Where are your progress reports? Are you in compliance? What do you need help with? Did you go up to the college and register for your classes? We're making sure they're following up. Okay, this slide shows we did have a community service program with the Parks Department, and I know the Parks Department and the court was really happy with the program and how it was running, but COVID shut it down. It's suspended. It's still suspended. And, hopefully we can return to this because it was such a great way for people to do community service and do it directly for the city. They would come to the courthouse on Tuesday mornings. The parks folks would pick them up and take them to what job that needed to be done. So it was really great. I'll look forward to having that program back. So right now, people that are ordered to do community service have to do it at a nonprofit agency in Aberdeen. And depending on where we are with COVID, some places were open and some places weren't for community service. So opportunities kind of waned and ebbed, but we still order it and make sure they follow through. Okay, and then getting to the actual budget, my budget pretty much is the same. There's just 2 increases, which is in the defense experts and then subscriptions. Subscriptions is things like Zoom, Adobe, and then the defense experts, they have made a point, the public defenders, that they want more investigators on their cases. And investigators are expensive, and they generally haven't really been using it that much, and they have given notice to the court that they're going to be asking for more. So we asked for a little increase, but we are asking for a $3,000 reduction in the telephone usage. So our net total is actually a $1,500 reduction from 2021 in those line items. That doesn't, I don't have the salary numbers up. Patricia, do you have that? Do you want to put that up, my actual budget, if they want to look at the bars items on there?
I sure can. So I have it by account type though. So I'll need you to stop sharing.
Okay.
And then let me pull mine up real quick.
Yeah, I think my budget, if you exclude salary, wages, personnel costs, my total budget is a little over $60,000 for running the court. And that's like copier, cleaning, supplies, the subscriptions, the defense experts, that kind of thing.
Do you see yours is right here?
Mm-hmm. So does anybody have any questions? No?
I do.
Okay.
This is Councilmember Ellis. Judge Solon, are you contributing to the Parks Department do you rent the log pavilion building?
Well, as I said, we haven't actually used it yet. So we haven't had an expense from them. And in those months that I had talked to the Parks Department and said, what would you charge me regularly? And then I've got that covered by the care, but then we didn't have one. So at this point, we haven't.
Is that in your budget then for 22, the allowance for some trials?
It would just go under like a general miscellaneous if we had one.
And is that the sort of cost that would be recouped as a court expense by the parties who are appearing at court?
No, no.
And you said you're hanging in there at 0.75 time, but how long do you think that's realistic given the numbers and your staffing levels? And
yeah, no, we're fine. We're a nimble court. We get through our caseloads and we're doing fine right now.
I'm just projecting ahead. At some point, we should be looking to meet what is recommended as needed.
Mm-hmm.
And sounds like that's not going to be next year, but maybe in a few years, few years.
I can certainly keep the council apprised if we think the numbers are getting too much and that we need to up the judge time. I could certainly, discuss that, but at this time, I'm not requesting that.
And is there enough money in the budget to pay the CAP aid people?
Are you referring to the community court worker?
Yeah, the case managers, or let's see,
yes,
what were they called?
The court does not pay for that.
Oh.
Yes, CAP provides that service.
I'll be darned. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Well, very good. Excellent. I mentioned this in an email to you, and I wanted to just bring it up again as part of this process, that given the new ordinance that was passed that allows for the city to prosecute people for illegally camping in public. After seeing your case numbers, yes, you're nimble, but could that tip the scale if you get a whole lot of campers coming through your court?
I don't anticipate that the number that would be something that would tip the scale. I really don't. It's actually going to be probably a pretty small number, because we're not talking of hundreds of cases coming through.
Well, awesome.
I wouldn't imagine. So, I mean, I say that, but I would not imagine.
Yeah.
I think there's some other offsets as well with how other things are how the law has changed for law enforcement, how they're not going out on other cases. So there might be an offset there. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for the good work you do, and appreciate you talking with us tonight.
Thank you for having me. Does anybody else have any questions? Yeah.
I Yeah, go ahead, Councilmember Andrews.
Well, Judge Sullivan, it's been an honor working with you the last 8 years. But when COVID is done and things go back to normal, I encourage everybody who's on the council and everybody who's going to be joining the council to sit in on court, especially during that Tuesday or that day when she has the people from that community court, because it is very educational and enlightening to sit there and watch that process. Don't assume that you know what's going on. I mean, just sit there and watch, because it is enlightening to watch. I had the privilege of doing that before COVID hit, so I would just encourage you to do so when that time comes. Okay, that was it.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I appreciate that.
Well, Judge Solon, not seeing other questions, I also would echo some of the comments by saying you're right. You don't join us very often, but when we do talk about you, it's with high praise. We very, very much appreciate our court and its operations. And we're just glad you didn't come to us with some outrageous request for more carpeting.
No. Yeah, well, I appreciate the kind words.
So thanks for running a tight ship. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
May I ask that the slides that we were shown get emailed to us for follow-up?
Yes, I already made a note that hopefully we'll get those. But thank you. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you, Judge Solon.
Thank you, everyone.
Next on our agenda, it looks like, is our police department. So Chief Shumate.
Thank you, Council President Shaw. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes,
awesome.
sir.
Okay, hopefully I will be able to share my screen here. And I'm hoping everybody can see that. Perfect. Okay, and hopefully most people know, but my name is Steve Shumate, and I have the privilege of serving as the Chief of Police for the City of Aberdeen. And so this is the 2022 budget proposal, of course, for the Aberdeen Police Department. And as I have done for the last, this will be the 4th year now for me, I always like to come up with what my goals are, what the agency goals are as we move into the next budget cycle. And these really have not changed much, because these are what my staff commit to every year. But first and foremost, obviously, is the health and safety and well-being of our department members. Followed by that is maintaining adequate staffing levels. And I will tell you, and I will get into a little bit more of this a bit later, but just like with Chief Hubbard in the fire department, we have a community that certainly utilizes its service. Our call volume is substantially higher than a lot of comparable agencies that we have. And I'm certainly proud of the staff that we have and the work that they do. Retention of experienced and trained staff is absolutely critical, particularly given everything that's going on. And I'm sure you've probably seen some pretty outstanding signing bonuses for police officers in other parts of the state. And that just goes to show it's just like other industries that have supply and demand issues. And I think that's going to continue to increase, which can be problematic for an agency our size. Improve efficiency for the agency. This is something that we have strived for continuously over the last at least 3.5 years since I've been with the department, and we certainly have made headways with that. And then, as always, enhance community engagement. Just very proud of not only our volunteer program, we have a full complement of 18 police explorers. And hopefully when COVID subsides, we will be able to get back to hosting some of our academies, citizens academies that we have done in the past. So on to just some of the highlights from this year. Obviously, COVID continued to be challenging for us. It certainly takes time if we are transporting someone, particularly to our jail, city jail, then of course takes time to disinfect the vehicle. We have processes in the jail that takes quite some time because everybody that comes in is tested, and that takes some time to isolate them before we get the results back from them. And then of course, constantly disinfecting the various jail cells throughout the day. So that certainly adds to the workload. Obviously, the police reform changes had been challenging, shall we say, and we have more changes coming about starting in January 1st of 2022. We've been averaging about 4 retirements or departures a year, and this year held true as well. And I anticipate that we will have at least 4 departures in 2022. Promotions, excited that we promoted Chris Rathman to sergeant on the October 14th. And then on December 6th, we will be promoting Steve Timmons to lieutenant and Jeff Weiss to sergeant. So we're just blessed to have great people going in and filling in leadership roles. Agency received 4 electric bikes, which we had put out press releases on. And then the business community also came up and purchased, gave us funding rather for cold weather gear. So our bike patrol can also operate in the winter months. So thus far, they've logged over 800 miles for the year. And so they've been a huge asset, particularly when we've had events going on. The most recent one is the Spooktacular for Halloween. As I mentioned, our police explorers and volunteers continue to be active during the year. Excited that we are a go for the Shop with a Cop 2021. It will be hosted at the Holcomb High School this year for the breakfast portion, and then we will do our caravan over to Walmart, which is always a joy to be with the kids as they go on their shopping spree. So thought I would give an overview of the department. Our current organization, if we were fully staffed, we would be at 54.5 employees. And on the left is the breakdown of the various positions. We do have a vacancy in our jail, as well as a vacancy in our support staff. We just have not, we've been trying to stay ahead of the game, if you will, with respect to officers, and we've done a pretty good job with that, but trying to get time to fill in those other vacancies, it's just been a challenge. And then on the right-hand side, there is the breakdown flow chart, if you will, for our department. Next is the police department staffing levels. I'd like to give a 10-year a shot of what it was. Obviously, 2020 was the year that we had full stats. 2021, of course, hasn't finished yet. So in 2010, you can see we had 49.5 employees. 10 years later, we're up to 54.5. That was an increase of 3 officers during that time. But as you can also see with the calls for service, we had just over 26,000, nearing 27,000 in 2010. And we had a 27% increase during that time, up to nearly 34,000 service requests in 2020. You can see on the left, the arrests made back in 2010, 1,638 with 5,874 citations. On the right, you'll see more arrests have been made, 2012, but the citations issued substantially decreased. And a huge part of that is when our call volume increases, our self-initiated activity decreases. And when you're not having traffic officers out there making stops and then issuing citations for other things that they may find, that number will go down. And as you can see, it went down quite drastically over that 10-year window. And then this is a new chart that we put together, and it just goes to show, as you can see, the blue is 2010. This one I broke down into 5-year increments. In 2015 is the orange, and then the gray is in 2020. We had a bit of a reduction from 2010 to 15 with calls for service, but then you can see a pretty significant increase in our calls for service in that last 5 years. The employee count there in the middle one, you can see slowly increasing up, the number of officers slowly increasing up. And then, as I've already mentioned numerically, that's just the graph on the right-hand side with respect to arrests and citations. So criminal division, which encompasses our patrol and our investigations, or our detective units that that division does incorporate 2 patrol lieutenants. We have 6 sergeants, 3 detectives, and 22 officers if fully staffed. And then just some of the pictures from some of the scenes or cases that they had worked. Patrol activity, as I already shared, nearing 34,000 calls for service. That's an average of about 93 service requests per day. And again, the tickets issued, over 4,000 reports written, 2,000 arrests, and then 329 reported collisions. Excuse me. And then this is a new chart as well. Chief Hubbard always puts me to shame with all of his graphs, so I figured I would throw in a few of my own. But that will just shows you the top numbers there. That's the E911 billable service requests. It was easier to pull that data than to run all the reports to get the actual true service request count. And as you can see, from 2016 to 17, we did have a slight decrease, but it's been rising since that time and continuing to increase. You'll see if you look at the types of calls as it relates to shoplifting, pretty significant increase in 2018. And then we're just very proud that we've been having reductions in that. And I believe one of the reasons is that was the same time that Walmart actually invested significantly into their loss prevention. And that really did have a positive effect on the reduction of the number of shoplifting complaints that they experienced. Some of the other businesses are not as proactive, and in some cases they don't report when there's shoplifting events, so those numbers can be a bit skewed. But overall, it does show what we're dealing with as far as the calls. Now, I do want to just mention one other thing, and I've heard it just this past cycle as far as the elections go, that they mentioned it as far as Aberdeen having one of the highest crime rates. And I will tell you that while we certainly have more challenges as it relates to that, we are still a police department that responds to every criminal case for which we have a victim that requests to file a report. Officers, it may take some time depending on the time of day it is, but we will take a statement, and if we have a suspect, we will follow up with that. And then ultimately we do a report. I am here to tell you that many larger agencies, if you don't have a suspect, or if your value for which you were victimized is not over a certain amount, in some places it's $5,000, they're not even taking a report. They'll tell you to go online and fill it out if you want to. So I think it gets skewed a little bit when people mention that we have one of the higher crime rates. And again, yes, we have some challenges, but we are still an agency that can handle all those, that do handle all those calls for service. Next is the detective unit investigations. We do have one detective sergeant, 3 detectives, and as you can see, they handled 670 felony cases for the year of 2020, and they handle everything of substance: homicide, robberies, burglary, sex offenses, you name it. They do assist with some misdemeanor cases, case investigations. They do assist other agencies with major case investigations. They handle all of our background investigations for new hires. We do have gang activity, and they oversee those incidents and the information from that. We still monitor roughly about 100 registered sex offenders within the city, and our phone extractions, while we had 45 in 2020, that is continually increasing. And actually, this week I was at the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs Conference, which is still going on. And they provided a figure that 85% of the individuals that we deal with all have smartphones. And so that is just an ever increasing tool that criminals are utilizing. And of course, we need to try to stay on top of that. And we do have the tools, and we have the staff that have the training to be able to do what we ask them to do when it comes to these investigations, but they are pretty time consuming. And then for corrections division, we have currently 6 police services officers. We are funded or budgeted for 7. So we do have a vacancy. We have just requested another test because we had only 1 person from the last test. Thankfully, it was a solid candidate. We did hire that young man, but we have a vacancy. And so we're hoping to get an eligibility list, hopefully within the next few months. But we do obviously have 24-hour care and custody with a daily population that averages about 11. And Lieutenant CJ Chastain, that oversees the jail, has been doing an exceptional job of keeping our policies and procedures up to date. He is also our manager as it relates to our pursuit of becoming an accredited agency again. So he is a very busy lieutenant. Most court appearances are now conducted through remote court video conferencing, as Judge Solon made mention. We also have our DCR with designated crisis responder meetings that are often conducted virtually via tablet. As you can see, they're provided by Olympic Health and Recovery Services, and it does truly expedite the evaluation process. And we are just blessed to have our physician's assistant, Patrick Paulson, who is contracted through the city, has been for a number of years. I will tell you that my counterparts at the sheriff's office tried to steal him away from us, is how I'm going to put it. But thankfully, Patrick was very happy working for us and is planning on continuing that service. And then onto our support division, the 3rd division, that is, we currently have a vacancy. And as I mentioned, we do have 5 police services specialists assigned to that, 1 evidence technician. On the left-hand side, you'll see the records section, and just really how busy they are. And 1,740 warrants entered, 853 pistol transfer applications. Anytime it's a presidential election year, that number just goes up. And so, but thus far through October 2021, we've had 600, but 374 concealed pistol licenses, 1,274 public records requests, and then again, the tickets and the reports. And that is a 27% increase on that. And then on the right, with respect to evidence, we have approximately 7,600 items of evidence that our evidence technicians is responsible for. I'll hit on that a little bit later, why it's an approximate count, but 2,440 property evidence items received in 2020. And then you can see the stats there as far as items processed and then items that were released or destroyed. And then always our drug drop box collected 49 pounds rather in 2020. And then I'll ask for questions at the end of these next 3 slides. These are just kind of highlights of some of the items with respect to the police department's budget. Hopefully you can see there on that first one, as the mayor made mention in his opening remarks, that was something I had initially budgeted for. I felt the need to try to identify a location before spending that money. This was something that council had approved earlier in the year for me to pursue. That I just was not able to finalize that. But I will tell you, I do support suspending this $90,000 from the budget. I believe that it's ROC project management, and I've already had communication with them. What we did get from the first phase that we've already paid for, which is the feasibility study, we did come up with square footage of what they think a new police department should be. And so ROC will be able to come up with estimated costs for us. And so obviously, I ultimately will support whatever the mayor and city council votes on, but this is something that I do support as far as suspending or removing this as part of the budget. The next is the patrol vehicles. This one here, so I had initially put in to the budget 2 new hybrid patrol vehicles, and as I shared last year's budget, that the department utilizes about a vehicle and a half a year. And so We only got one vehicle in 2021, so it had been my intentions of getting 2 vehicles in 2022. And in case it might be Councilmember Ellis's one of her questions for me on the hybrid, that hybrid is only about a $3,400 increase, but we actually, in the long run, we get that money back and then some. And of course, it's a savings to the environment as well. But it's all about supply and demand. And unfortunately, vehicles continue to increase in price. And so I think the overall cost is shy of $5,000 more than it was the year before. I believe I have 120 some thousand in my ER&R fund currently. I had budgeted 65,000, just like I did last year, to go back into that fund, but then that would have given us more than enough proceeds or funds to purchase 2 hybrid vehicles. But as the mayor mentioned, he did not want to purchase any vehicles this year. So and again, I will support that. But as I shared with the mayor, the challenge that the police department has with respect to our patrol fleet is, and I never recommend this, but in 2016, I believe we purchased 5 patrol vehicles. In 2018 or 2017, we approved, and in 2018, we approved purchasing, and I think it was 6 administrative and detective vehicles. And the challenge, particularly with patrol, when you utilize these vehicles on a 24/7 basis, because we don't have take-home vehicles, and so it's not like they get a break every 4 days. These vehicles get miles put on them, and they're not like highway miles like State Patrol or the Sheriff's Office. These are city miles that we are putting on them. So the fleet currently has 4 patrol vehicles at over 100,000 miles. The K9 unit, which is an assigned unit for obvious reasons, is over 110,000. So I had put in a request for 2 patrol vehicles. One was to replace the K9 vehicle, and then another was to replace one of the other 105,000+. The added challenge to this is Ford, unfortunately, is almost 10 months out for us to get a vehicle. So we don't put our request in until the budget gets approved, which is not until January 1, of course. And the last vehicle that we got for this year came to us in August, and we're not anticipating that the next one will come until September. So I just share this to council. My concern is this time next year, there may be a request for 3 patrol vehicles. And I really try to avoid that. Again, I think it's advantageous to get on a cycle of 1, 2, 1, 2 for the most part. And there may be an odd year every now and then where you may have to get that second vehicle. And then on to evidence. And then I'll ask for any questions up to this point for either of these slides before I move on to the next one. But so evidence, the Aberdeen Police Department has completed the facility upgrades, and again, a shout out to Director Sanger and his crew over the past year and a half have done an exceptional job at keeping our prices down, costs down with respect to these upgrades. We just installed the alarms for our evidence annex. And so the last item for our evidence upgrade is the evidence tracking system. Currently, most of the evidence that we have from mid-1990s up to date is under our Spillman system. Unfortunately, we did not have, it does not have an ability to take in evidence prior to that. And we have some very old evidence. Whenever you have a homicide, that evidence, it just stays with you forever. And so this new system that we are looking at is called Evidence on Cue. And if I can here. And so that system in the long run will pay for itself. It's the first time purchase is $28,500. And then after that, the yearly maintenance is only $1,200. But there's a tremendous amount of time spent by officers when they have to fill out the master evidence records, they have to fill out the tags. And then when they're putting those into the evidence locker, then our evidence technician has to take that information, enters that into our system, but manually has to make sure that we put timers on them, depending on the type of case it is, whether it's a misdemeanor, whether it's a felony, whether it's a sexual assault, whether it's a homicide, and it goes by statute of limitations. And then when we get to a point that we are ready to get rid of evidence, there's a thorough review process that involves the commander Commander Dale Green. And that is, all of that is a very time consuming process. So what's exciting about this, and this was what was recommended to us by the folks who came here and did our LEMAP process a few years back and recommended this, is that it will certainly speed up time. It'll get officers out on the streets quicker, significantly reduces time for our evidence custodian, evidence technician, as well as for Commander Green's time for this. So, and I had put down there, I believe ARPA funds could be used, but ultimately if the council approves the use of ARPA funds for those other restricted areas, then of course, the monies that would save could be used for whatever the council decides it wants to. So with that, how about any questions up to this point or with any of these three particular items?
Chief, this is
yes.
Council Member Ellis.
Yes.
And maybe by the time you're ready for 3 vehicles, there'll be really sweet incentives and the electric patrol vehicles will be available. So maybe it's the silver lining. Just so I'm clear, your need of this evidence on cue, so that's not been budgeted for. It's in the budget, but
so we really, to be frank, we've been going through so many things with respect to getting us to accreditation. And we hope to be starting that review process by the first of the year. But we had to do a lot of upgrades. We had to do upgrades to our facility. And then we had to install the alarm system because that's best practices. And that's also a requirement for that as well. And then the evidence on cue was a final recommendation from the LEMAP that we did in 2018. And so it's a barcode system. And what the officers do, they put on these strips on the evidence and it's barcoded and automatically goes into the system. And then with that, the system also has an ability to put a tracker on that sends notice to the evidence technician as well as the commander about evidence when it's ready to be destroyed. And that's a very time-consuming process. And the other exciting thing with this is that this program, it does integrate with our Spillman system. And so ultimately, we will be able to get all of our evidence downloaded into this system. And then we could tell you at any given moment how many pieces of evidence we have in storage, how many pieces of evidence we have at the crime lab being processed, how many pieces of item that are in the courts or at the courts. Currently now we have to do hand searches to get an accurate count.
So you would like that in 2022 if the money can be found, it sounds like.
Correct. That is something I put in my 2022 budget, and that up to this point, that is something that the mayor has approved of. Okay, awesome. Thank you. Council President Shaw.
So if we don't do it, are we not able to complete accreditation?
No, I don't think this will prevent us from being accredited. Okay. The only challenge I have is it is just very time consuming. And this, as I shared in the long run, will save us money. Councilmember Meskis.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I'm just trying to catch up a little bit. So the evidence on cue is not budgeted? Is that?
It is. It's in my budget, and it's the budget I submitted, and it's the budget that the Mayor Shave has submitted, approved of, and submitted as well.
Okay, so that is going to go through. We're going to have that
if you ultimately approve it.
Okay, fantastic. Because I was looking at the cost of this and thinking if we're doing a lot of manual checking on things, that the cost of that labor is probably a lot more than the yearly maintenance of this software. So
absolutely, absolutely.
And for the criminal justice facility, I'm sorry, I had to tune out for like half a moment there. I'm just curious, why was this taken out of the budget? I thought this was something we were wanting to push forward with because it's so necessary because the building is like falling apart.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously the last time we had discussion was with respect to possible location, and council gave you some direction to go forward with further discussion. Since that time, the city has come up with Rock Management Services, and I've had conversations with them, and we know basically what the square footage is of what the facility should look like or should be. So they can take that figure and come up with a ballpark, if you will, of how much a new criminal justice facility would cost. And so I think that is a very prudent move. So at least as the city as a whole, we know how much, we're going to know how much the fire department replacements are going to be for the two locations. I think we'll have a general ballpark of how much the police department is going to be. And hopefully when the city has the big picture and come up with some funding plans, then we'll be able to go back and say, okay, we are very close to move forward with this next phase, which is the design phase. And then hopefully come back at that point with requests to move forward with it. So I do support this. I think it's a prudent move given everything else going on.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other questions before I move on to the next slide? Okay. Three more areas. House Bill 1223, and I did discuss this with council back at the end of June. There was a bill that is now law, comes into effect on January 1st, 2022, where it will require.
If you meant to advance a slide, it didn't work on my screen anyway.
It did not. Did it for anybody else?
I see
No.
It did for me.
Mine looks good.
Okay.
Oh, there it is. I see it now.
Okay. So hopefully you're seeing on the left side, House Bill 1223 picture. Okay. Or for some of you, hopefully at least. So on that there, I had budgeted $5,000 to purchase a government-approved cloud-based storage system for mobile interviews. As I mentioned, it's mandated January 1st through House Bill 1223. And the law requires us for certain situations to record interviews out in the field. And so we have converted over to smartphones for patrol cars. This is what Supervisor Wayne Schmidt found. It's the cheapest thing we could find that will satisfy the requirements. I do see eventually the state is just moving towards wanting to have body cameras. Of course, they're not wanting to pay for it. They're wanting us to pay for it. I would eventually venture to guess sometime down the road, that's something we're going to need to entertain. I do see more and more grants becoming available for that. But for now, this is the cheapest short fix with respect to that particular mandate. The next one is a speed measuring tracker and display. This is something that we just not been successful with getting grants. It's a very specific grant for this. There's always grants, seems available for us to get radar units and laser or LiDAR, and we've been very successful at getting those over the last 3 years. And so I did put this in my budget to purchase a portable speed measuring sign. We've had some very positive feedback of recent with respect to the display that our volunteers have been using out there, but that's all it is. It doesn't track. They have to be present and they have to direct that radar gun to the moving vehicle in order to get a display. The nice thing with these units is not only will it display it, and it can be 24/7 with, it has its own power source for several days. It'll let citizens know what their speed is with the hope that, oh, shoot, I'm going too fast, I'll slow down. But then it gives us the data and tells us, okay, what is the speed? How fast are people going on average? What is the fastest times during the day for which people are going? And then we can be more directed in our patrols for that area. And so for that one, and then the last is our police navigator. We are so blessed to have Delana Moore. She has already been utilized in Aberdeen and Hoquiam for a few of our contacts. And this here, I did put in $5,000 in the budget to help for any incidentals that may come up. The grant, for the most part, paid for most of the expense, with the exception of office space and patrol unit time. But of course, that's not something that cost us. I'm not really anticipating there's going to be any substantial costs to the city of Aberdeen, but I don't know. And so I put $5,000 in there just on the chance that something comes up that we need to cover. So any questions on any of those three? Okay, and then I'll move to my last slide before questions. And did this come up, Police Explorers?
Yes.
Okay.
I see it.
And then, so as I mentioned earlier, we are just been so blessed to have an awesome program with great Commander Dale Green is the one that oversees that. We have a number of our officers that are the advisors. Unfortunately, this past year, because of COVID, they were not able to attend the Police Explorer Challenge, which is something that they work for all year long. But we are hopeful that they will be able to attend that in August of 2022. So I put $5,000 again in that line item budget for our volunteers. I will tell you, we only used $1,200 for the year thus far. And so that most of that costs, a small amount goes to uniforms for any of our new youth that join the group, but most of that cost is for the cost of going down to the challenge. It's an awesome experience. I went down there 2 years ago, I guess it was, and just a joy to see the youth of today going through these various exercises. And then our volunteers continue to be very, very active, as I've shared of recent, the hours that they have submitted thus far for the year. And it's on the slide there as well, approaching the 1,500 hour mark. And again, just very proud of the work they do. And then I always like to bring up, because of course, you know, we're public servants. We work for the citizens of our community. I was part of the group that helped bring this to the voters back in 2016, and our voters graciously approved that. And so for the city of Aberdeen, as you can see there, in 2020, brought in nearly $540,000 from this tax. And thus far through October 31st of this year, city's already received nearly $550,000. And so obviously this fund, or the funds from this tax, helps to maintain the staffing levels for the Aberdeen Police Department. And I like to put that last just as a reminder. And I often tell my folks, you know, we don't forget that we do work for the citizens of this community. And I think by and large, we try to do the best job that we possibly can. But it's not lost on us that our citizens obviously put forth great resources for us to be able to do what we need to do. So with that is my last slide. Any questions?
Can I just comment?
Mayor Shave, yes.
On the last three slides, or last slide that you showed with the three items on there, these aren't very expensive, but they are extremely valuable items. We get a lot of benefit from all of these programs. As everyone probably knows, I've been a big fan of the Police Explorers program. And the more we can support that program, the more opportunities we're going to have for young folk in our community to get involved with this and try to keep some of our youth here working in our police department, good, wholesome jobs. It's really a great deal. And also with our VIPs, what we spend on that is we get back tenfold in value. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would just echo what the mayor said on as far as our police explorers. I mean, we have, well, I won't call them out. I don't know. not that he would be embarrassed, but you know, we have a commander that is a former police explorer. We have a sergeant. We have line officers. So it's definitely, as we got our return on the investment when they were younger for the city, for sure.
And then I'll just say that again, because I'm outgoing, I know. But when he is able to get the Citizens Academy back up, I will tell you that I was the first and only city council person in Aberdeen that did it that first year. So I encourage every city council person to go through it, because it really shows you every aspect of what the police department, all of our police departments throughout the county do, as well as the drug task force and the state, you know, what the state patrol helps them with. I mean, it just is very informative. So I encourage you to do it.
Just so you know, I did police academy, but maybe Bill Ellis was the police chief when I did it, but
a few years ago.
I'll just chime in and say that Councilmember Andrew is holding up my end on the VIPs, and I hope you continue to do that. Because I wouldn't. Thank you, Tawny. I'm looking forward to seeing you out in your yellow jacket, and I know you'll continue to do great stuff for us.
Any other questions for me?
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, and
I have a couple things, but I think they're not worth taking up everybody else's time, just clarifying, so I'll catch you later.
Okay, thank you.
So next on our agenda, I think, is our fire chief, Tom Hubbard. And Chief, before you get started, can I just say one thing, bring the council up to date on something that I wanted to do tonight? I wanted to make sure that the council knows that we have an opportunity, and coming forward at our next meeting, we'll probably be bringing forward a request to go out again on the RFA in February. And so I hope that we can budget for that and that it gets put into the budget. And so, but that'll be something coming to the council. The resolution's already been redrafted, and hopefully, so they were on it. Aberdeen and Hoquiam continue to work together at the staff and council level. And we're going to, you know, debrief and figure out how to put that thing over the top. So thanks, Chief, for all your work on that. I know if anybody was disappointed, it would have been you. So
I'm numb. So I'm trying, this is the first time I've really shared PowerPoint. So I'm hoping you see a title slide with Aberdeen Fire Department 2022 budget. Yes.
Yes, sir.
It is.
Oh, beautiful. So I have the luxury of presenting three budgets, essentially, the fire budget, the EMS utility budget, and then I pick up the 2022 911 call center, because I always like to do a favor for the police chief and make them look good. So I've got the Brady Bunch screen minimized. So if you have a question, jump out and ask. We'll have time at the end, but all I see is little tiny people. So we're going to proceed ahead, and I guarantee we're going to get out of here at a decent hour. So moving along. Please move along. There we go. So we're going to start with a general overview of the budgets that I'm dealing with. Like I said, fire and EMS are separate budgets. EMS is a utility, the fire is general fund. If you combine them both together, just to get a snapshot, it's a total budget of $7,589,000, but we deal with them separately. The fire budget, I'll start with the general fund. This year is $3,092,000. That is, I forget the number, that is a little bit less than last year. That's $57,000 less than last year. And we'll talk about why some of those cuts can occur. The big thing you'll notice, and I'll touch on this later, personnel costs for the fire department are 79.8%. So as I've said for many, many years, since 2012, the fire department doesn't make anything. We have people that solve problems, and those people cost money. So the supplies and everything to keep them going make up the remaining percentage. It's the personnel costs and that's very similar for the police. Our people are what solves the problems. On the EMS side, the budget for 2022 projected or requested is $4,498,000. Looking at them both together, it's 59%, 41% of the total overall. Just as a snapshot, but just stressing again, they're two separate budgets, and I have to be very careful on how I manage the EMS utility. There's some RCW constraints on what can be used with that money because it's a utility. Very restricted on any capital projects, as in really no capital projects. I can use the money to repair this and that and the other thing, but that is why all of the TCA architecture had to come out of the general fund. The EMS utility is prohibited from doing things like that. On the EMS side, 82.7% of the total budget is personnel. That's salary and benefits. We'll get into it a little bit more on the next slide, but for the fire budget, which is the 00148, that is 3 administrative staff, a portion of my salary, the assistant chief and the administrative coordinator, all 50% of the fire service specialist, and then 15 line personnel. And then the EMS budget, which is the 120,000, that's the remainder of the administrative staff, the fire service specialist, and then 100% of the EMS account specialist who does our billing, and then 21 line personnel. So that is how our personnel costs are allocated throughout the budget. So this is the 2022 organizational chart. It's identical to this year and last year. We have not added any positions. We have 36 line staff, which is the battalion chiefs and below are the ones that are working 24-hour shifts, 24 hours on, 48 off. Above that, the fire service specialist, who we give a report from every month, is a daytime, 5-day-a-week position. And then above that is myself, the assistant chief, administrative coordinator, and EMS account specialist. So when we're fully staffed, we have 41. I currently have 3 vacancies, and I'll have a 4th in December with a resignation to pursue an alternate career. Very sad to be losing that person, but I understand the reasons why. And believe me, all I've been doing for the last 2 years is trying to hire people. We did have a new person start Monday, very excited about that. We have a potential candidate starting December 6th. I had another one lined up for December 6th who had accepted an official and then has since declined that official. So we're scrambling, and anytime we have a vacancy, that means we're running short, which means by contract we have to fill. And therefore, if you've been looking at the monthly financials, the overtime budget is what it is because I have to maintain staffing for the contract and for safety. So this is our current organizational chart. And just as a reminder, the ESCI 2018 feasibility study identified that really I should be adding 6 positions based on our call volume, our configuration, and things like that, which is what we're hoping to identify or find a solution with the RFA. But as it is right now, I should be adding 6 on top of the 36 I have on the floor. So just food for thought as we're moving forward. As a comparison, the last 10-year call volume, 2020 we went up. Right now for 2021, we are 570 calls ahead of this same time period in November. I ran the numbers yesterday. 570 calls is about a month and a half of calls. It's EMS and it's fire. Lately, we've been having a lot of fire calls, but the EMS calls have just been going through the roof. And as I have mentioned during my various talks about the RFA and previously, just a reminder that fire and EMS calls, they're time sensitive and labor intensive. The tones go off, we have to respond and be there within 4 minutes for an EMS call, 8 minutes for a fire call, and we have to have the right resources on task, on time to get the work done. There's no, at this point, there's no saying, yeah, we received the call and we'll wait. In Aberdeen and all of Grays Harbor, we have a very good system. In Thurston County, you may call for an ambulance for a BLS, a basic life support call, and there may be an ambulance at times at your house in 35 to 45 minutes based on the acuity. That's how they operate their system. Our system is much better. However, it comes with a cost. So that's what we've identified. And then as I've discussed before, the simultaneous calls for service were exceeding 50%. And what that means is we have an ambulance or two or multiple units out on a call, which means that we're really starting to have difficulty to handle that second call, that third call, the fourth call. And so all of these things is what we were trying to address with the RFA. It's just something since my career here, I've noticed that it's increasingly difficult to manage the call volume. So let's talk numbers. I'm going to talk about the fire department first. That's general fund 00148. I broke it down into basic categories. This is something I've done for years and years. So wages and benefits, I lumped together. And that again is 79.8% of the budget. Our supplies, which is all sorts of supplies, from station supplies to fire equipment, to anything that goes on a fire engine to fire hose, is 3.7% of the budget. The other services and charges, that's our professional services, that's our utilities, that's our vehicle maintenance, that's all those other categories is 7%. And then the last one, the interfund payment, is the payment of the 2 Pierce fire engines. In 2022, we will make a payment of $292,936. That will be paid off in 2023 with a final payment of $145,000. So that will satisfy that interfund loan, and that brings us to the total of $3,092,199. Some notes: in my submitted budget to the mayor, I had $20,000 set aside as a replacement to start the replacement cycle for 2 separate vehicles. That was removed from the budget, and I understand, and I can absorb that. But as the police chief said, we can't get too far behind because then you're really struggling. I put in the budget notes as a project, but I did not even submit it for consideration. We have identified that our station alerting system in both our fire stations is outdated. It's on its last legs. Jim Creel actually helped construct that. Those that remember Jim, I think part of it was a Heath kit, part of it was Radio Shack, and I don't know where he got the other parts, but it's not working well with the newer dispatching radios. It's barely holding together. We sought input from a company. It's called Phoenix Alerting. They are the most efficient and modern in station alerting, and for really a basic bare bones alerting for both fire stations that also ties in with the dispatch center, that was $164,000. The bulk of that would have been able to be transported from an old station to a new station. I ensured that the hardware could go, the hardware that goes to dispatch would stay. But I just wanted to put that in there that, you know, we need to do some upgrades, but I understood with this year's budget situation, that was a non-starter. Per usual, minimal funds allocated for facility maintenance. It's basically we fix it if it breaks, a bay door, a water heater. We've had some pretty serious plumbing issues this year that have incurred some pretty good costs from plumbers. We've still got rain buckets catching rain next door, especially the last few days. We're looking at about $300,000 in roof, if it's a membrane roof to be, and we patch as we go. So there's not a lot of money, and I'm hoping that rock project management can identify some solutions. Already talked about the fire apparatus. And then I did budget to replace one command vehicle in 2022 with existing monies in the fire equipment rental. Currently, there's $202,000 in there because I've been trying to be very good about putting money away each year. So that will not cost budget dollars, but it will reduce our equipment rental reserve. Questions so far? Yes.
Thank you very much. Quick question about the station alerting system. What are the ramifications if that system fails completely?
I don't think it's going to fail completely. What we're finding, part of it is the speakers truly are, I believe, 1970s era hardware. We've had Sam Adams has been instrumental in trying to piece it together. What we're doing is we're putting portable radios in places where the system seems to be failing. So instead of a single, how the system is supposed to work is we receive a tone from the dispatch center that opens up a system that then all the speakers and the lights in the station come on, and we can hear the broadcast, and then it turns off. We're finding that is failing at times. The lights are no longer turning on. The speakers are either inaudible or they're scratchy or they're popping. So we're working around it. The reason for the cost of the new system is that there's been a lot of scientific study on how personnel should be alerted, especially at night. It goes to their health, well-being, and safety. And then there's also display boards throughout the station so that at any given time, someone can look up and see what units are out, what calls are pending, and so forth. But more importantly, at night, right now, if it's working, when you'll hear a pop as the speakers hit, all the lights will pop on bright, and they'll be a very loud. If you've ever heard our tones, you're up and moving. The new systems gently turn the lights on. The tone is more subdued. It's all designed to not bring somebody from never a deep sleep down here, but sleep to wide awake and going. It's all about adrenaline dump, and they've linked it to colon cancer and all these studies. So it definitely will be installed in a new station. We're just trying to look ahead. I will say that we did meet with the 911 dispatch center because this would incur a cost for them. That this probably should be a countywide backbone system. And I'm going to see if one of my people can work on an assistance to firefighter grant for the whole county, multi-jurisdictional, to see if we can go that way. So that's my goal with that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. So the vehicle being replaced is a 2007 two-wheel drive pickup. It will be maintained as a surplus vehicle, and then we will be surplusing a 2005 Crown Victoria, which I have offered to Chief Shoemate. I think he'd look really good in it, but he declined. So, but that one will be surplused on government auction. Okay, emergency services. So this is the utility. Salary and benefits are 82% of the total. The supplies are 2.4%. So supplies are everything to do with stocking the ambulance, medications, bandages, everything for the monitors. Some station supplies we have to be very careful about. The other services and charges again are the professional fees. It's our billing bridge for our billing program. It's our cost accounting services for GEMT that we pay. All of those fees are wrapped into that. The utilities. The reallocated costs are the costs that go from the EMS utility back to City Hall to pay for the position. So, and I'm not being negative, but every time a position is added in finance, legal, or HR, that impacts the utility. And if you see a trend, this first started off as about a $40,000 bill 5 or 6 years ago, and now we're up to 178. So that is what that cost is. And then the transfer out for 911 we'll discuss more in detail when I get to that budget. But the EMS portion of the total 911 fee, I transfer $44,460 back to the general fund. That is the EMS portion of the total. So for budget highlights, I am very diligent about transferring money every year into equipment rental. The amount being transferred is $80,000. That remains in the budget. I intend to purchase an ambulance in 2022 using existing ER&R funds. We had hoped to do that in 2021, but COVID got in the way and we just never could get to it. I have learned that we will most likely have to go out to bid for this ambulance. There's no valid piggyback bids that we can go off of, so it'll be a full bid to purchase that. And similar to what Chief Shoemate said, it will probably be later in 2022. The problem is that I will need to move quickly to secure a van front type Ford chassis, buy the chassis, have it on hold because those are becoming far and few between. Now for the bad news. We're seeing a decrease in revenue in our 2021 revenues. Quite a bit. We're thinking $700,000+ decrease in revenue, and we're confident we know the reason, many reasons. COVID, initially March 2020 when it started to hit, and then the messaging all the way through this year, they were telling people, if you feel sick, but you're not really sick, stay home, don't go to the hospital. We don't want to overwhelm the hospital. So we started to see a slight decrease in call volume. What has really hurt us is Grace Harbor Community Hospital being on divert. They've been doing that all year long, but the last several months has been more often than not. They're on full divert right now. They were on full divert through the weekend. Saturday alone, we had 3 transports from a person's home to Capital Medical Center. What we're finding is, because our call volume is up, our calls for service are up, our transports are down. We only charge if we transport for Medicare or Medicaid. You can only charge if you provide a service. So we're going to people's homes. They need to see medical help in the form of a doctor. But when we tell them, well, we have to go to Summit, or we have to go to Providence, St. Peter's or Capital, we're often being told no. And so our transports are down. Now, if someone is extremely sick, extremely unstable, we ignore the divert and we go to community, and we're to make sure we're taking care of the people, but it's definitely having an impact on our ability to collect revenue. And so to offset that, we have forecasted that we need to increase our EMS availability fee that we haven't increased in a while. Let me move ahead. So we've developed 3 options. So a full rate increase of the EMS availability fee would be an increase of $8.17 a month to a total EMS availability fee of $32.04. And for those of you who haven't seen this spreadsheet before, I'll run through it. So the total expenses for the service is $4,498,000. That's our expenses projected for 2022. We're projecting that we will receive revenues from Medicare, Medicaid, and private insurance of $1,560,000. We have decreased our projected revenues, as I said. Normally in the past years, that has been higher. But to be conservative and to stay on track with what we're seeing, we reduced that. The revenue from the outside agreements, that is from the fire districts and outside contracts, and then the total other revenue and that equals the total other revenue. You have to balance it. So cash used to reduce rate, we left at 0. We have 7,296 billing units. We need to collect $2,805,000, and that's how you get to the $32.04. So that's the full rate increase. I've got 2 more for you to look at. And we'll talk about my recommendation. So option 2 is using $715,000 in reserves that are in the EMS fund. Right now in the EMS reserves, if the ARPA funds are moved over, we have $3,547,000 sitting in EMS reserves that is for EMS. It can't be moved out because it's a utility. The reason it has a substantial amount of money is when GEMT started, they did some back pay of a few years, and then they caught us up over a couple of years. And so over a couple of years, we got a deposit of $800,000 and $700,000. And so it helped bolster our reserves. Those are over now that the system is balanced out. Last year, when we finally settled, we had to pay back $4,000. This year, we're on a final settlement. We got $3,000, so we've kind of hit equilibrium on the GEMT. So the gravy train is over, but we've got some money sitting in EMS reserves. So option 2 is to use $715,000 to balance the utility rate to maintain the EMS utility rate at $23.87 per month. Option number 3, which is the option I recommend, is that we use $357,000 of the EMS reserves. The EMS availability fee will increase $4.09 a month to a new $27.96. To me, it's the most fiscally responsible. We don't know what next year will be. Hopefully the hospital will stop going off divert. That will help. And we'll see what it balances. So to me, this is probably the most conservative use of the funds. Plus, we haven't increased the rate since 2018. This is part of what we talked about, that what we're currently doing is not sustainable. Part of our RFA pitch that we're going to pay one way or the other. Here we are, we're paying. So that is my recommendation for the 2022 EMS availability fee, is that I run a resolution through. The EMS availability fee is run by a resolution that I run that through so that on January 1, we can increase the availability fee to $27.96, and that we use $357,000 of the EMS reserves to maintain it, to hopefully see what happens next year. Questions on that little bit of good news?
Yeah, if the RFA is resubmitted and it passes, would you still need to do this?
Yes. Part of, you'll see when the resolution comes out, and it's all about timing. The original go live date for the RFA was going to be July 1st of 2022. That logistically really can't happen because what the RFA also needs is an elected governance board. And there will be no time between February and July to do that. So the new proposed start date is January 1, 2023. That will give time to put a lot of things in place to run in the next general election. I would assume 3 positions for the governance board. And even with that, and Patricia could probably help me, Corey's tried to explain this to me, but the EMS 50 cent per thousand levy that was proposed and the property taxes and all those things are not available for a full year because they have to start being collected. So in the RFA plan, both cities are still funding the fire department as an RFA until their own revenues are generated. I will move on. So that's it for fire EMS. Now we're on to the call center, which is actually the easy one. That's why I offered to do it for Steve. He just doesn't know that. So for 2022, the total is $316,715. You can see that it's actually gone down a little bit from the 329. Part of that is how they're now collecting their revenue. We used to do the original charter was, and I can't even do it because I think it involved calculus, but it was a percentage of the population and a percentage of assessed value, and then you divided by 6 and multiplied by 5. They've now gone to a service fee per organization and a call charge. So the city of Aberdeen pays $20,945 for police and fire, and then $8.70 per call that fire, police, and EMS generate. And that is how we came up to the $316,715. Again, I calculate the EMS portion of that. That will go back from the EMS utility back to the general fund. It's its own transfer line to help offset that. So the general fund portion then is $272,255. The 911 center is very modern. It has great equipment. It's on the cutting edge of technology. It runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's no way we could fund our own dispatch center and keep up with all the rules, regulations, and staffing for that amount of money. So while it is a large fee, it is a critical component to public safety. They're truly the first of the first responders that are involved in a scene. So with that, I'll answer any additional questions.
I would just like to comment, means I see no hands up. I think your explanation of the woes with EMS funding clearly gives a good picture of the future of our EMS system if we don't get this RFA in place. It's not just a matter of simply making better service. It's a matter of saving the service that we have. And there's other things that I've got a vision of here from both police and fire department. Our emergency services need some help. And that's why I've tried to make it so priority for me to try to get a fire station and a police station built, because they're both struggling with equipment issues, which makes it hard for personnel issues. And you see the number of calls they both do. It makes it hard for Chief Hubbard and Chief Shoemate to hire new staff to fill empty slots. the workload on our fire department. We've already seen some firefighters leave. It's just a bad situation, and I feel like it's actually been neglected. We need to consider and give it more thought onto how we can put more priority into our emergency services. Thanks.
One more addition. So the fire department was able to complete their site assessment and feasibility study and needs assessment. TCA did complete because you did fully fund it. We were able to hammer it through. The finished project is complete, and Lisa Scott and I, our intent is that they will present to you in January or February, whenever we can fit it in. We just knew the calendar right now was too full for them to give it the full. The document I have is what they would call bond ready. We've got schematics, we've got drawings. What we don't have is a site. We were sort of planning in a vacuum, so that will always change things. But we have two designs. We have a headquarters facility and a South Aberdeen Annex facility that I'm excited for you all to see. Of course, from that to building drawings will be different, but we have the complete package, and I appreciate your support. You added on an additional funding so that we could complete that, and we were able to do that this year, which was the goal. So our goal, and I'm going to throw Lisa under the bus, is January, probably with a workshop that the architect will run through the higher level of the plan to show you what we came up with.
Thank you, Chief. Does anyone have any more questions for the Chief?
From what I'm hearing, it's getting me thinking that our police and fire and 911 operates kind of on a similar basis as the community hospital, in that the demand is really huge at, proportionately to the population, and there's not the tax base to fully support the costs. And I just wonder, is there a way to get a higher percentage of money from either the county or the state, given these really high call rates?
So that's a very good question and very good observation. What I say is we have a very high needs population, and I don't say that to be derogatory. I say it because we have limited access to healthcare. We have limited access or no access to mental health, and we see what the impact is on the community. That's why I've been very involved with Grays Harbor Public Health and all their opioid outreach, trying to go on the offensive instead of picking up the pieces afterwards, trying to go on the offensive. Some people aren't in favor of that, but hey. So our payer mix is our payer mix. We have a high Medicare, Medicaid, SSI. Those are our people, and we embrace them. They need us. But you're right, they don't have the funding to support what we need. That is why GEMT, which is federal money helping to come in to offset the loss in Medicare, has been instrumental. So without that, we'd really be hurt. So that's one step. We do not have the tax base to support, and we're seeing that with the RFA when we rolled out the fire benefit charge. You roll out the fire benefit charge in an area like Graham or Puget Sound with their major industries and commercial, those payer mix pick up the bulk of the fire benefit charge. We're 69% residential. that's why we have the issue, but it is what it is. There are other RFAs that are struggling with that. I don't know the answer. That is why community hospital is suffering. They lowered their bed count to a 49 beds so that they could charge 125% of Medicare and Medicaid. It still doesn't seem to be enough. I don't know. I don't pretend to know how to manage a hospital. I just know what's going on up there is absolutely destroying the Aberdeen Hoquiam Fire Department's ability. They've been on divert all weekend. They're on divert right now, and it's devastating. It's devastating for our people who are trying to do the best they can, and yet when they call the hospital, nope, we're on divert, won't take them. And I'll tell you this, from my years as a paramedic, it is a really dark, lonely stretch of road in the middle of the night between Elma and St. Peter's through the Black Hills when you've got somebody that's in crisis. It is a scary feeling. So the stress I'm putting on my people, it's not good at all. And I don't know what the solution is. We've been meeting with 3 months with the hospital on a divert committee. We haven't made any progress. So I'd like to be optimistic and roses and sunshine, but not this week. Sorry.
Chief, are the legislators any help at all with this?
I think they're aware of the divert, but so here's the reality of it. We have been very fortunate with community hospital for years and years and years. I've been bringing patients up there since 1992 as a young, eager medic. So I have a long history with that hospital. My wife just retired after 25 years. And you had doctors like Dr. Max and Dr. Gibbs and all these doctors that were local, that they truly put their heart into what is community, and they made it work. And my first meeting with the executive leadership of Community Hospital, I said, so here's my opinion. 5, 10, 15 years ago, the staff up there would rather have eaten their own arm off rather than go on divert. That doesn't exist anymore. And they're struggling with staffing. Absolutely. They are bleeding more than I am on staffing. I'm hoping they're working to correct that. But what we're experiencing over the last year and a half has been going on the I-5 corridor for 10 or 15 years. Divert is just the name of the game in hospitals. It's how they deal with overflow. So I don't think there's any big solution. The Department of Health doesn't really have any rules against a hospital going on divert. And divert really is just a request. We can bypass it, and we do. If we have somebody that's going to die, we go to community. But it's creating tension. So I don't know what the solution is. The hospital business is a really hard one to be in. I wouldn't want to do it, but I just know it's really having a bad impact on the EMS services. And before that, I know Chief Shoemate didn't mention it, but early on, they started going on a mental health divert, and that really put a wrinkle in what the police can do and what we can do. So once again, you take the Jenga blocks of the mental health system and you yank another block out in Grace Harbor County, and that's what you get. You get a pile of blocks laying on the ground.
Thank you, Chief. So I don't see I don't know how to do anything but empathize and say we appreciate everything that's being done. I know I do for our citizens. I know I live in a community where I know if I called, you guys would come and you'd be here. And so there are communities where we can't say that. So we've got that. Not seeing any more questions for the chief. I think we still have some more. We got phase 2 tomorrow, unless council members had a desire to stay later tonight and discuss. My preference would be to finish getting through the whole budget presentation and then share our thoughts tomorrow if we have time, or look at the time and decide what our next steps will be. What do you guys think?
Me personally, I think having the bigger picture would be, better to really have a more meaningful discussion.
Yeah, not seeing anybody, with a lot of questions. I'm in favor. Oh, Councilmember Andrews.
Well, I just want to say that I have Council of Governments tomorrow night, so I may be late. But I was going to finish that because that meeting doesn't usually go that long, so I'll do that and then pop in. So
sounds good. Well, everybody, thanks for coming tonight, and we will just. It's not really adjournment, more like a recess, but we'll adjourn till tomorrow night. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great night, everybody.